Well, the second week of the federal election campaign is underway, and just like the first week, Donald Trump and tariffs top of mind.
And of course, this Wednesday, April 2nd, we could be seeing reciprocal tariffs. U.S. President Donald Trump is likely to slap those on countries including Canada this Wednesday. Liberal leader Mark Carney is expected to be campaigning in the GTA, including Toronto today. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is set to start his day off in Victoria, BC, before heading off to Edmonton. And Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre will be in New Brunswick.
So let's talk more about the election campaign. Daily analysis, of course, this morning with CTV's political commentator, Scott Reid. Hey, Scott, good morning. Hope you had a good weekend. I did see you on the tube a couple of different times, so I know there's plenty to talk about here. What do you think about, where to start this morning? Should we talk about those poll numbers showing that Mark Carney's lead continues to widen?
Sure. Our own Nick Nanos is showing now that the Liberals have an 8-point lead on a national basis. But I think the number that's most important to look at in Nick's set is the 15% lead that we see Mark Carney stretching out over Pierre Poilievre when it comes to the question of preferred prime minister. That, to me, is the sign. That's the key. It tells you that this issue of Trump and tariffs and the trade war hostility from the United States are carrying Carney toward a much more preferred place. People, frankly, just see him as more capable of taking on and managing Trump than they do Pierre Poilievre. And that then gets translated into the overall party preference numbers. That's the challenge for the Conservatives. That is the strange, perverse good fortune for the Liberals, is that this news, which is consistently terrifying and difficult for the country, actually causes people to turn toward Carney. And as you guys mentioned, we're going to get another dose of it this week with reciprocal tariffs. And even if they're less injurious than we might have otherwise expected, it still just cranks up the sense of anxiety, the worry that maybe my job isn't safe, maybe my plant won't be open in 3 months. All of that preys on people's minds as they watch this election and they eventually cast a ballot.
Yeah, that seems to be the ballot question and kind of the umbrella that, covers everything else. So let's turn to the Conservatives right now. Boy, what a, turn of fortunes for Pierre Poilievre and his team. And now there seems to be some criticism among Conservatives about how divided their strategy seems to be. So kind of what's going on with their messaging these days?
So you see top Conservatives like Corey Teneycke, who ran Doug Ford's campaign in Ontario, and successfully so, by focusing on the Trump and trade tariff threat. And yet you've seen a slightly different approach federally here in this election, where Poilievre has run something more of a traditional time to throw the bombs out, time for a change campaign. Obviously talks about Trump, and obviously talks direct and tough about Trump. But it isn't the through line of his campaign in the same way that it's been for Carney. So you see somebody like a Corey Teneycke in Ontario criticizing the federal effort, saying you've got to re-engineer your campaign. You have to look at least as angry with Donald Trump as you look, Pierre Poilievre, at Mark Carney. And that's getting pushback. But we do see that today there's a little bit of a reorientation of the Conservative campaign. They're going to be focusing on the threat of Trump and trade. And we'll see if there is a shift in their rhetoric, particularly as Wednesday's deadline on tariffs looms.
How big is Wednesday potentially, Scott, in this campaign here? I mean, the debates aren't for another couple of weeks here, but, quote unquote, Liberation Day, Mark Carney gets to be, obviously, technically he is the prime minister, but we generally refer to him as the Liberal leader. It's another day where he becomes the PM and looks prime ministerial.
That's right. I think one of the immediate tactical effects is he'll probably be forced to drop off the campaign trail, as you mentioned, again. Well, this is something we haven't really seen since wartime, like literally since the Second World War, where a prime minister has to keep switching caps. I'm no longer a candidate for office. I'm now actually the occupant of the office. And so we'll probably see that on Wednesday as he responds to tariffs. There are people who say, wait a second, there's a vulnerability here for the Liberals. If the ongoing threat of tariffs is what's sustaining this ballot question, what is sustaining Carney's popularity? What if after April 2nd we have 26 days of relative calm? And that's possible, I suppose. But I don't know about you guys. My observation of Donald Trump is not that he goes fishing for long stretches of time. I think he's going to come barging back into the middle of our election campaign. I think he's going to have more to say. And the other factor, of course, that's a real concern is, do we see corporations and companies and employers react? Do we start to see them in the aftermath of April 2nd say, well, I've actually got to knock that third shift off, or I've got to close operations, or we're now considering whether we move to behind the tariff wall and relocate to Alabama or some damn thing. And so you get the feeling that no matter what happens on April 2nd, it's going to cast a shadow that will last at least till April 28th.
Well, we just heard that from Sylvain Gauss from Ernst & Young. He was on our couch saying some of his clients have decided they're just retrenching, going back across the border and setting up shop there. And he said he hated to say it, but he called it a win for Donald Trump. So, yeah, Wednesday is going to be huge. Appreciate this, Scott.
Yeah, thank you. CTV's political commentator, Scott Reid, a busy man these days. We'll chat again tomorrow. Thank you.
See you guys.